All right, we're looking at P9. Our goal here for P9, we're going to solve quadratic equations by factoring. And what I really want to I'm going to get the idea of first is something really simple. And it's the idea that if I had something like 4 times 0, I know that the answer is going to be 0. And if I had something like 0 times, I don't know, negative 13, well, 0 times negative 13 is going to be 0. And in general, we can make this a little bit more blanketed of a statement. Anything times 0 is 0, or 0 times anything is 0. Right? You knew this. This is one of those things you got in kindergarten. Oh, the 0, that one's nice because it's always just 0. Alright, so now that we kind of remember that idea, what happens if I multiply two things together and their product is 0? So I don't know what A is, I don't know what B is, but I do know that when I multiply them together, I get 0. So that's interesting. I don't know A, I don't know B, but I know that when they're multiplied, I get 0. So I wonder what kind of conclusion we can draw. Well, let's just say that A is not 0. Let's say that A is like 5, right? Well, 5 times something equals 0. That something has to be what? And the same goes for B. Let's say B is like negative 3.984. Well, then what does A have to be in order for my product to be 0? All right, so if I catch myself in a situation where I have something times something equals 0, then either A must be 0 or B must be 0. All right, so either the first thing has to be 0 or the second thing has to be 0. And this is called the 0 product property. It's an amazing property, and it's something I like to consider like the crowbar of math. You know, I get everything pushed up, and then set equal to 0, right? I'm going to push it all up against the corner, and then I'm just going to use a crowbar and pry out the answer. And that's what's so nice about this. So when we're dealing with quadratics, and we want to try and use the 0 product property, what we're going to do is we're going to set everything equal to 0 first. So set everything equal to 0. And we're going to do that with addition and subtraction. All right, we're going to add and subtract terms from one side or another until everything is set equal to 0. Our next step is to factor. And then our third step is we're going to set each factor equal to 0. And those are going to be our steps. Nothing too terribly difficult. Now I'm going to start off with an example where we already have a quadratic where it's already factored for us. So let's take a look. Our first example here, let's say that they give us something like 3x minus 1 times x plus 7, and that whole thing equals 0. Well, I know now that I have something times something equals 0, right? So let's look at what the 0 product property says. Something times something equals 0, then either the first thing equals 0 or the second thing equals 0. So here, on our example here, I have something times something equals 0, right? Remember, when parentheses are by each other like this, it means multiplication. So either the first thing equals 0, so 3x minus 1 must equal 0, or x plus 7 must equal 0. And now I can just simply solve these very basic 1 and 2 step equations. So now I'm going to add 1 to both sides, and I get 3x equals 1, divide by 3, and x would equal 1/3, 1/3. And over here, all I have to do is subtract 7 from both sides, and then x would equal negative 7. All right, so my answer is 1/3 and negative 7. Let's try another example here and see what we get. All right. We have x squared plus 7x plus 10 equals 0. Alright, so x squared plus 7x plus 10 equals 0. Well, I don't have something times something equals 0. I have something plus something equals 0. So I need to do something here in order to get it to where I have something times something equals 0. And that idea here, we're going to have to factor. So this is where P5 comes into big time. Alright, so we have two things that equal to 0. Alright, my factors for x squared, the only thing could possibly be is x and x. 10. Factors of 10 are 1 and 10, 2 and 5. Starting with the ones that are closest together, get a 2 here, 5 here. The plus sign means they're going to have the same sign and they're both going to be positive. And when I check, 2x plus 5x is 7x. Well, now that I've factored, I'm going to set each factor, x plus 2 equal to 0. And I'm also going to set x plus 5 equal to 0. And now it's just a simple subtract 2 from both sides and I get x equals negative 2. Subtract 5 from both sides and I get x equals negative 5. A lot of people are going to be tempted to just jump from here to the answer. Oh, it's just the opposite sign. Great, I know the answer. And what you're missing is the whole point. The whole point is to set each factor equal to 0 and take your time and truly understand what it is you're doing and why you're doing it. If you have a better grasp and a better understanding of what you're doing and why you're doing it, whenever we get to the really difficult problems later on, you're going to be very thankful that you had that process and that time to think about it. Alright, so now let's try another example. We got two more. Let's do this guy here. We have 7x squared minus 14x equals negative 7. Well, let's go back and remember. Whoop, hey, dang near broke it. Let's go back and take a look at our steps here. Right? I want to make sure that everything is set equal to 0 first before I factor. Right? I need to make sure that everything's set equal to 0 before I factor. Well, here's my equal sign. And it's not everything is not set equal to 0. So I need to add 7 to both sides. And that would then give me 7x squared minus 14x plus 7 equals 0. And now I need to factor. And at this point, one of those really nice things, I hope you remember to do the greatest common factor first. Well, the greatest common factor, I have a 7, a 14, and a 7. I could drag a 7 out front. And then I'd be left with x squared minus 2x plus 1. Then if I divide the 7 on both sides, I'm left with x squared minus 2x plus 1 equals, and 0 divided by 7 on your calculator will still give you 0. And now I can factor this much easier. My only possibilities for x squared are x and x. The only possibilities for 1 are 1 and 1. Same sign, and they both have to be negative. So now I can take a look. Negative 1x is negative 2x. So yeah, I can now set each factor equal to 0. And I have my answers. So sometimes you're going to have to look for a GCF. The best way is if they're all even or pretty obvious. Right? 2, 4s, and 6s. Anything that ends in a 2, 4, 6, and 8 or 0 is what I'm going to look to get to factor a 2 out first. Alright, let's do one more example here. Got time for one more. Oh no. I lost my paper. The wind blew it away. We're outside today, so my son is asleep inside, so I didn't want to wake him up. So we're outside, as you can see. Right, here's my backyard. Hello, backyard. Alright. Last example. We have 6x squared minus 13x plus 3 equals negative 3. Now again, I want to get this negative 3, I want to get them to the other side, right? I need to make sure everything's set equal to 0. So I'm going to add, add 3. So that's gone. And that leaves me with 6x squared minus 13x plus 6 equals 0. And this one's going to get kind of ugly. Because this is a 6, 13, and a 6, that 13, there's nothing in common with 6's. So, my factors here, I'm going to factor and make mistakes on the side before I put my factors over here. So the factors of 6 are 1 and 6, 2 and 3, 1 and 6, 2 and 3. So I'm going to start with the ones that are closest together. So here I get a 2x and a 3x. And over here I have a 2 and a 3. My second sign is positive, so that means I'm going to have the same sign. And I know that they're both going to be negative. And now I can take a look. Negative 2 times 3x is negative 6x. 2x times negative 3 is a negative 6x. And that leaves me with, darn wind, negative 12x. Man, I needed a negative 13x. So I know this one's not going to work. So we have a 2x and a 3x. If I had an eraser, that would be much easier. Well, that one didn't work. So what happens if I switch my 2 and my 3 around? So instead of the 2 here, I'll put the 3 here and the 2 here. And again, I know both signs are going to be negative. So negative 3 times 3x is a negative 9x. 2x times negative 2 is a negative 4x. Negative 9 minus 4 is negative, ha-ha! Good. So now I know that I have the right one. And I'm going to set my factors now. So I get 2x minus 3, 3x minus 2 equals 0. And now I can set each factor equal to 0. Here I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So 2x equals 3, divide by 2, divide by 2. So x would equal 3 halves. Here I'm going to add the 2. 3x equals 2, divide by 3, divide by 3. And x equals 2 thirds. So x equals 3 halves and x equals 2 thirds.